Beau certainly placed on the college football season, and now we begin the NFL playoffs in earnest this weekend. Unfortunately, without us, but we know that already. So it's like I'm at peace with it, and you're back, and you're near me all the time now, and it's
joy.
That brings me pure joy.
That is joy. Did you watch that game last night?
I watched a portion of it. I did not watch it in its entirety. And the portion that I did watch happened to involve the injury to Jamison Williams, which is
heartbreaking on every level.
Every level.
So they lost. So not only Jamison Williams, but also John Mechie, who's their other receiver. They had 2,000-yard receivers. Mechie went down in the SEC championship game against Georgia early in that game on turf. Jamison Williams, very clearly, no contact, just an Achilles. Or I'm not an Achilles, an ACL. For Jamison Williams, former Ohio State guy, of course. He would have been the number 3 receiver at Ohio State.
So what does it have to do with the turf? Why is it that?
Well, you talked. It's the same reason everyone's pushing to get away from turf. Turf doesn't
grass.
give. Everybody should be on grass. Anytime you talk to anybody around the NFL, the NFLPA, everybody says grass, 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 and there's still so many of these turf fields, and so it's one of those things that just doesn't give. He's just running a route, and the Achilles blows. that's crazy. He's not. It just doesn't make sense. And the same thing, or not the Achilles again, the ACL. I keep saying Achilles, the ACL. So that was brutal. That was brutal to watch, and unfortunately, and you hated it for the kid. He's a former Ohio State kid, transferred to Alabama, is a first-team All-American, was their entire offense. He very likely would have been the number 1 receiver off the board. And now as we go to the business side of it, from our perspective, and we're not into draft stuff yet.
He was in the mix at 13, had to be.
Absolutely. And so when we were, this very much feels like, and just as a quick aside, we're a long way from it, but it does feel like the year we took Jed, where it was like, well, we're taking a tackle. It feels like we're taking a receiver.
Feels that way.
Right? And then all of a sudden he was in the mix. It was going to be him, Garrett Wilson, I'm sorry, he who shall not be named.
Whoa.
The problem is, though, with this Cinco, sorry, from our vantage point, he who shall not be named now will, I think, unquestionably be the number 1 by far. Jamison would have been the one who would have been in competition with him. And by the way, 3 Ohio State receivers all will go in the first round with Jamison Williams, played at Ohio State and then at Alabama. All 3 of those guys are on the same team. Jamison Williams played in the national championship last year for Ohio State, played in it this year for Alabama. So that was brutal.
He's a guy, though, that maybe you're able – you think about Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah.
The defensive tackle for the Titans, who was out of Mississippi State, I want to say.
I believe you have that right.
Who they ended up taking him at the end of the first round and sat him basically. He was unavailable for the majority, I think, of his rookie year, if not all. And now he's an all-pro. He's a stud.
Yes. And
so you wonder if that's a guy that maybe you make some moves and get, late first round, maybe you get 2 of them.
Yeah, now you're talking. That's the fun.
Now we're cooking with gas.
The thing that jumped out to me was
we're already here. It's Tuesday. We're already on this part of this portion of the show. It's sad. We didn't think
draft
we'd be
time.
here.
Draft time is
let's
here.
Go.
That's where we are. The thing with when you watch when you watch that game, what jumped out to me was the sheer amount of talent on the field. And if you think about what's happened in recruiting in the last 5 years, and this is a direct conversation into the draft, which is obviously where we're at now. What's happened in recruiting in the last 5 years is those 2 schools, and then Ohio State would be 3rd, have really lapped the field. They've lapped the field in recruiting. Last night, Georgia's roster, I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, Georgia slayed Goliath." Georgia has 19 5-star recruits on their roster. 19. There are if you just drafted from those 2 teams and just put those guys, look at are you kidding? Do you see those DNs?
All right, there was one play that I was watching that I want to say that Alabama was in. I think they were in a shotgun and they threw a little flare to the left.
Yep.
And the guy who made the tackle started that play outside the right tackle and went like a blur.
Yeah.
The speed that was on that field was it's a good NFL team speed. I mean, if not better. It was just an insane collection of talent in one place.
Yeah, the 2 defensive ends for Alabama, 31, Will Anderson, who was the best defensive end in football this year, and then that 15, who was a freshman, that just chased anybody down. It's a stunning amount of talent that's on the field. That was the thing that jumped out to me was just, my goodness. And neither one, by the way, Alabama's got their quarterback back. They got both defensive ends back. They'll have all those receivers back now. Offensive line was young this year. You do an early, top 5 for next year. It's Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia 3. It's the same teams over and over, and the gap is getting bigger and bigger between them and everybody else.
It is, and that's the thing that's hard to watch. I mean, in the sense of where people are – for me, the logic behind opening up the playoff to more teams is that you might get some compelling games out of teams that are on the same level. But to watch the way that, Alabama and Georgia just smacked their competitors, you knew what the finals was going to be before before they played a game. I mean, for Michigan, for example, to win, or Cincinnati, everything would have had to gone perfectly right to script in their favor. They can't compete with the athletic comparison is night and day. Ohio State's the only other one that can.
Yeah.
And so you've got 3 teams that you would feel, and I would imagine like the way LSU came up. Every year there's going to be some SEC team, right, that had recruited really well, and they end up hitting on a couple guys that end up becoming superstars. But it's coming from the SEC,
and it usually lands with a quarterback, whether it's Burrow or it's Cam Newton at Auburn or it was Florida with Tebow. Like there's certain instances where a transcendent player comes through in addition to the talent, and then you can go deal with Bama. But Bama goes nowhere. Like they stay right there, and then it's just a different SEC team that cycles through.
Yeah, and that's what's wild about it. But you're right. The talent gap is just nuts when you watch it.
And it's not going anywhere. I mean, it's those 2 defensive lines. You saw that 99, that Davis for Georgia on the defensive line, the big D tackle.
Yeah, monster.
Who's blocking him at this level? Like,
nobody.
Here's the other thing that's crazy is, and you were down there. You were in Atlanta for school, obviously, and you know how big college football is in the South, obviously.
Look at this today. I mean, he's got nothing about the feet. No, he's no. But how about the Carolina Blue?
How about
again?
the Carolina Blue?
Jeez.
Everything coordinated.
Yes,
unbelievable. A lot of senior swag on a Tuesday.
And he's back. He's back.
I never saw him out, so it's all I know, which is good. I wouldn't want to.
No.
What I was going to say, though, is you know how big of a regional brand that is. The tight end who was the leading receiver in that game came from Napa, California for Georgia. 5-star tight end. Went to the University of Georgia. That's what's happened in recruiting. How is that possible that a kid from Napa, California went to Athens, Georgia? How did Georgia become a big enough brand that they would even recruit that type of kid, let alone be able for him to go, I'm not going to go to USC or Notre Dame or wherever California kids go. I'm going to go to Georgia. That's what's happened in recruiting.
Because he's already living
Georgia,
this guy's from Napa. He's living the good life.
SEC brand.
Well, it is. It's all of that.
It's SEC. You want to play in the NFL. The best way to get to the NFL is to play in the SEC first.
Yeah.
And then Buckeyes are probably ahead of a majority of SEC schools, but it's the SC, and then it is Ohio State.
Yeah.
It's not the Big Ten. It's not the ACC. Clemson had a nice run for a while, but you want to go play in the NFL, you go to the SEC or you go to Ohio State. If you're that good, that's what you're picking.
Right. And it's only going to get bigger, and just in terms of where that sport is right now, the SEC added Texas and Oklahoma this year. There was talk of that they were talking about expanding the playoff, and Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, said, we got to – I'll paraphrase, but he basically said, hey, everybody said that this was going to happen, but everyone's got to want to work on this. I'm quite happy where it is. I got news for you. Not only is he quite happy where it is, where he gets 2 teams in every year, and the 2 teams oftentimes end up winning it. One of the 2 teams ends up winning it. The other thing that he would be plenty happy with is, you know what? I really don't need the rest of you. I got 20 teams. 12 of them are among the 20 most important brands in the history of the sport. I really don't need USC or Ohio State or Michigan or Notre Dame. We're going to crown our own national champion. We'll do Premier League, European football. We'll go 20 teams, 2 10-team divisions, play a championship. Heck, they could do their own playoff. Top 2 teams from each side, 4-team playoff. That's our national champion, and nobody down there would care.
Yep.
And that's something that the people at Ohio State, the people at Notre Dame, the people at Michigan, people at USC, you better be aware of that, because that's what he's thinking about. And right now, I haven't seen anybody up here who's pushing back and saying, whoa. What do we doing here? He's out there playing chess. They're playing checkers. That's what's happening right now.
When does Ohio State join the SEC?
Well, I think that would be their last thing that they would want to do. But I think they could get to a point where there's no choice. And I think the more logical path for them next would be to find a way to buttress the Big Ten. And for them to make the Big Ten is currently a 14-team league. I think the Big Ten maybe is it possible the Big Ten goes to a 24-team league?
With who?
And they add USC and Notre Dame and UCLA and Oregon and Washington and Florida State and Clemson become a true national conference? That's the only – there's no other card to play.
I feel like in that world, though, you're the big fish in a small pond, and the ocean is still down in the SEC.
You don't have a choice because they have already won. They took Texas and Oklahoma. So the only thing that you can do is try to get similar. USC, Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, like those are the most similar. It's not Texas and Oklahoma, but it's the most similar. They have to think macro.
Don't you think, though, if you're the U or you're Clemson and you're Florida State, given where you're geographically located anyway, you're trying to get into the SEC?
But the SEC doesn't want them.
They're not wanted.
No. Because they already have that region. They don't need those schools in that. They don't need them.
Interesting.
They don't need them. So
I just think
Florida would not want to give Miami and Florida State the olive branch of coming into their league. They don't need them. No, you guys continue to stink. We don't need you.
They should make if I'm the SEC, the white whales, the Buckeyes. You bring them in the SEC, it's over. That's the end of it.
Well, you'd have to give them a dance partner.
That's it.
So right now the SEC, I think, is going to be at 16 teams. So if you did Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Notre Dame, then that's it. Then the rest of college football's done.
Toast.
So the question is, does Ohio State want to try to be involved with something like that, or do they want to push to do something? The only other card they have is the one I explained. That's really it, is to go even bigger and to say, well, you'll take the Deep South, we'll take the rest of the country and hope for the best. But the Big Ten added Rutgers, Maryland, and the SEC added Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma.
Yeah. Not quite the same.
Not quite the same. Not quite the same.
This isn't even like Juan Dixon, Maryland.
No, it's not. And the other thing is and you think about Clemson, how great that program's been in recent years, had a tough year this year, but they're about ready to go to a situation where the SEC schools are making upwards of $90 million a year from the television contract, and the ACC schools are making about between 25 and 30. How can you stay on a level playing field?
So they wouldn't want Clemson to come in?
No.
Interesting.
No, because they already have it. They already have South Carolina's in the league. Georgia's in the league. They don't need that region to sell more television.
They're just good, and it's big.
They are, but you would then that's a huge olive branch to them that you don't need to do. They're interested in expanding. That's why you think about they now own Texas
and Oklahoma.
Yep. Those are all football mad places. They don't need any more in South Carolina. They don't need Florida State. They don't.
So
need
Miami. They would want Buckeyes, Michigan,
Penn State, Notre Dame,
USC.
But yeah, those are the only ones left.
I mean, do they? You mentioned like the Premier League.
Yeah,
like that's what they should do right now with the teams they have in their conference.
Well, they could. I mean, they're set up to do that. Nobody knows what they're going to do.
That's what they should do is if you can win the SEC, I don't even know.
Just win the SEC.
SEC 2.
Yeah.
If you win the second tier, you get bumped up to the first tier the following year.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Like
you
actually relegate within the
your
SEC.
own conference.
Yeah. I mean, they are such power brokers. If you factor in also what's happening with name, image, and likeness, the amount of power that is concentrated in that part of the country is stunning.
I have a question for you because I would defer to your expertise on the subject. Somebody said, "I love how you guys have already forgotten about Clemson and have already replaced them with Ohio State. It's cute."
I'm sorry.
Clemson's had a great run. They're a great program. They sent a lot of guys to the NFL.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just talked about the Clemson situation.
But they don't recruit on the level that the Buckeyes do.
No. They would be behind that. Now, they have landed masterfully at quarterback. Yeah. Going all the way back to Taj Boyd and then Deshaun and then Trevor. They've landed the quarterbacks. They've landed receivers. Yeah, they're a big-time program, but this comes down to brand. It comes down to the value of the brand, and it comes down to the television deal that they're currently under in their conference. The Big Ten is the one thing the Big Ten has going for it is they will be able to negotiate a grant and rights deal, their next television deal, that ought to pay them in the neighborhood of what the SEC is getting. It ought to be in that neighborhood. 80, 90 million is what it should be. There is no card the ACC can play that will generate half of that, and that can't be fixed. And the SEC doesn't want them. It just, it stinks, especially for somebody like Will Scarlett.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of it. But they were great. I mean, they recruited well. It goes all the way back to C.J. Spiller years ago.
Running back thriller.
Yeah, they've done it at a very, very high level. But that was fun. It was a fun game last night, and I was happy for Georgia. 40 years in the making for them. It hadn't been since 1980.
Is that, given the constraints and the rules and the spread and all of that, what they did as a defense, I mean, in the year 2021 in the SEC, is that maybe the most dominant defense in college football, certainly of the last 20 years, given the rules, given everything that is slanted towards the offense's favor to average, would they give up 8 points a game?
Yeah, it's tricky because it was also, if you around college football, like this was the year they had to do it because Bama was starting over with a freshman quarterback who ended up winning the Heisman. But they knew everybody knew Bama's offensive line wasn't great this year. Florida was having to replace a lot of players. They ended up firing their coach. This was Georgia's year. Ohio State had to replace quarterback. I mean, so there was Clemson had to replace a ton of guys. So like they opened with Clemson. It was a dogfight game. Yeah. But they had to replace a lot of guys. So this was the year for Georgia. Kirby Smart had been building towards this. I think the most remarkable thing is like they won with the Stetson Bennett kid who was incredible in the fourth quarter after a crazy turnover that you thought iced the game. He made some incredible throws to win it. But will that ever happen again? You have 8 years of college football playoff. Stetson Bennett just won a national championship as a preferred walk-on at Georgia. Cardale Jones won the first one at Ohio State. In between, it's a lot of Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow. It's a lot of those guys in between. Those are the guys who've won the other 6.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the model of it is you've got to have that guy. And they may be the last one to do it.
It's a model at every level of football.
Yeah, it's
when
kind of important.
Guy, you're
pretty
good.
important.
Oh,
and no school was that more directly tied to success than Clemson.
Yeah.
I mean, they hit on 2, and Taj Boyd was really good too before them, which set the table for Watson and Lawrence. But that's what elevated it. That's what elevated Clemson. They landed those quarterbacks.
It's one of those things, you talk about what makes a good, in this case, a good college program. Obviously, it's the recruiter, it's the coach. So it's different in college than it is in the NFL. But you look at the most successful coaches in the NFL, what was standing next to them?
Oh, yeah.
Darn good quarterbacks. Like, forever. I mean, it's just it's that linked. Speaking of, Andrew Luck looks like he's ready to be on like a Sherlock Holmes movie with like a monocle, and he's incredible. Like I can't even believe that's Andrew Luck.
Or an extra on Yellowstone, he could do that too.
Great. Oh yeah, for sure.
With that mustache.
He literally walked out of a cave.
Do you think that Jim Irsay calls him every week just to check in?
Yeah.
Like, hey, how you doing, man?
Yeah.
No, still no? All right, I'll see you next week.
We'll try again.
See you next week.
We'll try again.
You have to I haven't seen him. There was that image of him, like, remember he played like scout team quarterback for a high school team in Colorado in the football season? We haven't seen him in forever. And then all of a sudden he surfaces in this crazy mustache in a weird outfit.
Right next to RG3, who is one of the finest dressers and just like a very well put together human being.
And Andrew Luck is like in an ill-fitted polo and
under
some sort
a blazer, right?
Yeah, but it was kind of seemed like it was like a shawl blazer. Like I didn't even know if it was it didn't have a whole lot of form to it. It was the damnedest thing.
What did he say?
Black and
I didn't hear it. I've only
shoes.
seen the image. What did he say?
I didn't see it. I missed it too. I had stuff I was doing, so I missed that part of it. So I didn't hear what he had to say either. I don't even know why he was there, other than just
an Indy.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's not like he's synonymous with Indy. He's been a ghost since he retired. You guys called that game. Wasn't that our game?
What, his last?
Our preseason game where it
was announced. It was announced during that, but he spent all week there. But he was out there.
That's what I'm saying. Like it was our preseason game where all of a sudden he had to walk off because the word got out that he was retiring.
That's right.
Wasn't that against us?
Yes, it was after a week of joint practices, and he was out there the one day. He was out there. It was like him and Peyton, and he was at all those practices, and they were saying, it might be soon that he'd be back. Ballard was talking, and then there it is.
How old is he? Is he like 31, 32?
Stand by.
He's got. I mean, yeah, I would think he's got to be in that
somewhere there, early 30s.
Yeah, let me see.
Something like that. I mean, if you're Irsay, I think you just call him every day.
He is 32 years old.
Yeah, I think you just call him every month. You just call him. Hey, Andrew, just checking in.
I put
How
it
about
in the
now?
rundown for later on, but Frank Reich refused to commit to Carson Wentz for 2022.
Well, how could you?
Well, yeah,
but I mean that goes back to the quarterback
That should be a full court press.
But that's like in these situations, and we haven't even gotten into yet, and we'll hear from AB and we'll react to that after this. But in these situations, teams are always looking to improve themselves everywhere, and it is especially true at the quarterback position. You wouldn't be doing your job if you weren't.
Right.
Now you have to, in many cases, play the hand that you are dealt, but where you can try to move around and make moves, you will do that. And Carson Wentz is a guy that is at times, prior to that ACL, suffered against the Rams that year. They won the Super Bowl, is playing at an MVP level. But he will be the maddening thing about Carson Wentz and the maddening thing about, a lot of other quarterbacks in the league that end up, not staying for long where they were is the word's inconsistency.
Yeah.
I would rather know exactly what I'm going to get when you go out there than have you look one week be the best quarterback in the league and the next week look like you've never played the position before. Because then we have no way to even accurately assess what we're going to be able to do as an offense or as a football team week in and week out. And I think for Carson Wentz, that is the biggest Achilles heel with him. It's he can be great, and then he can do things that you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then you can't go out on the road and beat the Jags. I mean, they got boat raced. That was a beating. That wasn't at the last second the Jags pulled out some magic. That was a beating.
Yeah, I think you'd have to look back, but I think over the last 8 weeks, it's been like 7 weeks where a team that's a double-digit dog has won by double digits. Like 7 out of 8 weeks that's happened.
Wild.
And for that one to happen was crazy. Some news and information on our side of things. We'll get to AB here in a second. Insider Kimberly Martin of ESPN, the Browns have asked permission to interview VP of Player Personnel Glenn Cook, a great friend Glenn Cook. Speaking of Miami, he's a Hurricane guy for their GM opening, and Albert Breer reporting that the Bears have requested an interview with our VP of Football Operations, Kwesi Adolfo Mensah, for that same job. So we're being plundered. To get used to it. You got a good front office. This is what happens.
Yeah, and those guys both very, very talented, very respected around the league, and I think it would be great if one of them does get that job because it would be great for them as people. And as Andrew Berry joked in his press conference today, they'd be going to the NFC, so I could root full out for them, which makes it a little bit better. So I'm very happy for both of them. I've had the pleasure of getting a chance to obviously talk with Glenn quite a bit, and then to talk with Kwesi on the sidelines prior to some of these games. So smart, so composed. Understands the game, organization building, roster, all of those things. I think both of those guys would be tremendous assets for any organization. I'm glad that as of today they're Cleveland Browns, but when you have great talent, they go other places. Just real quick, we were talking Wentz. Gibbe, I'd like to do a quick guess the stats.
Please, yeah.
Great.
Carson Wentz 2021 season. We'll start with completion percentage, and I'll tell you his career completion percentage is basically 62.5.
You're looking for this year?
Yeah, this year. Completion percentage, Carson Wentz.
And this year it's 62.5. His career is 62.5.
Yeah, just to give him like a ballpark.
I'm going to say 58%.
Okay, 62.4%, right on his career average. Passing yards.
Boy, that's tough.
3,200.
Pretty good guess. Slightly above. Extra game, though, gets you there. On a 16 game, he was 210 per game, 35.63. Touchdowns and interceptions.
I don't envy you with this because I would be terrible at this too.
Touchdown, interception. Just go with what you feel. Go with what you feel. Like what you're in your mind. What Carson Wentz is. What do you feel? Touchdowns.
I know he
interceptions.
missed games. That's what.
No, he played all 17.
He did.
You with the injuries.
You just love people being injured. I don't know why.
Injury prone.
I really thought he was though.
No, he was going to miss a game
he
for
had a
COVID
game, but
he came back. He didn't miss.
He was
I'm
fine.
going to say like 22-14.
27-7.
27-7 touchdowns to interceptions. 3,500 yards, 62% completion. Wow.
27.
I thought it would have been a closer. I would have had him in the 26-14 range, 26-15.
27-7, which
seems to be pretty close to winning football.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
Until you don't win and you're going home.
I did not see any of the game against Jacksonville, so I don't even know what happened.
Dominated from start to finish, Jackson.
Really, they just dominated.
Trevor Lawrence looked like Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence started the game 11 of 11, I want to say.
Wow. He just slung it wherever he wanted to.
That's crazy because they had all those injuries at back. They had injuries at receiver. Like
I can't talk
so much chaos.
Anymore, so
yeah, you're out. You're out on that. It is State of the State Day here in Berea. Our general manager.
It's amazing how Gibby just seems like everybody's missed all these games. Everybody's hurt all the time.
I really did thought. Yeah,
so great.
Great.
So you'll hear from our general manager on Andrew Berry on the off season, among other things. We're off and running. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau here for Char Whiskey Bar and Grill in Rocky River. Enjoy over 300 whiskeys and craft cocktails paired and made from scratch menu items. Catch the game of the week at Char Bar. Enjoy date night with craft cocktail or a glass of wine and a nice steak. Dine in, carry out for brunch, lunch, and dinner. Char is hiring multiple positions, including kitchen manager, prep, and line cooks. Stop into Char in Rocky River to apply. Support local. Visit Char Whiskey Bar and Grill in Rocky River or at charrockyriver.com. The 300 whiskey on the list, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. That's a good list.
It's an elite number.
That's an elite, and it's a quality. It's not just a quantity.
No,
they know
elite.
what they're doing. It's a procured list. You will be happy with it. I assure you of that. Here is our general manager, Andrew Barry, from the podium earlier today.
Good morning, everyone.
You guys are down 12 minutes.
I just, thanking our players, coaches, football staff for all the time and energy that they put into this current season, this last season. Look, we didn't get the job done this year, and we're all, disappointed that, we didn't meet our own internal expectations, and that we're not playing meaningful football this weekend. Ultimately, we're just too inconsistent in really all three phases, throughout the season. And again, we're all disappointed that we didn't reach our goals this year. That all being said, we do believe that we have a lot of, core pieces on the roster, within football operations that would allow us to, have success moving forward. And speaking of moving forward, just to talk a little bit about what the next few weeks will look like for us. Really internally, we'll really review everything. We'll do a kind of a postmortem from the season and review everything across the roster. Our cap and cash situation, across football operations. Kevin will review the coaching staff and everything that we did schematically, with really the goal for improving in 2022. We all wish that 2022 could start next month, because I think the toughest part of today is the fact that we're not going to play meaningful football games for another 9 months. And I think that leaves a pretty sour taste in all of our mouths. And that's something that we really want to work hard to eradicate and again, make sure that we're playing meaningful football this time of year. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Hey, first and foremost, Baker Mayfield. Do you expect him to be your starting quarterback next season?
Yeah, we fully expect, Baker to be our starter and bounce back. So I think Kevin mentioned this yesterday. So yes.
In your exit meeting with him, can you give us a sense of what you went over, what you would like to see him work on? Obviously, health is paramount, but beyond that, Andrew, what strides would you like to see him make in the offseason? Yeah,
Tom, it's a good question. I think respectfully, any kind of one-on-one meeting that I would have with a, player, that would remain between the player and myself. Generally speaking, we're looking forward to Baker, obviously getting healthy in the off season, and then putting good work, through the spring and with his coaches for, having the type of season that we know we can have moving forward.
Yes, Andrew, you guys have come under, some fire for not shutting Baker down sooner and, letting him heal up the shoulder and starting case and seeing if you guys couldn't maybe win a few more games that way. So we've heard Kevin talk about it, but what's your kind of view on that whole approach this season?
Yeah, I think Kevin did mention this yesterday and I talked about this a little bit at the bye. Medically cleared, the player feels good, can perform everything that's asked of him and required of him in practice. And, Baker was our starting quarterback. He was going to play if he was ready to go. And, I don't think it's any more, complicated than that.
Do you have any regrets about when you look back? I mean, now that everybody's talking so much about the shoulder, was it worse than maybe he led on to you guys, or did it turn out to be, in hindsight, maybe something should have happened differently?
Yeah, look, I think, probably any season where you don't reach your goals, you look back and examine everything. We felt good about the information that we had throughout the year and on hand. I think, the reality of it is we all wish that we and, everybody across the team were able to perform better and allow us to reach the playoffs this year.
You talked about before looking at the body of work for your players when you're making decisions about the futures of the team. When a player's playing through an injury over the course of a few games or even a whole season, what's your organizational standard, for the data that comes in to that body of work? How do you benefit from seeing a player handling it? Does the data get an asterisk next to it? How do you weigh everything out?
Every situation is unique, Cam, based on, the injury, obviously the role that the player faces. I think the reality of it is that you get to late in the year and really everybody's fighting through something, certainly of different severity. I don't mean to minimize, one injury versus another, but so it really is on a case by case basis, and you try and take all the information into account and make a fair judgment.
Andrew, I get another Baker question for you. So how do you process the struggles that he had this year? And then what gives you the confidence that he will be able to bounce back in 2022 and give you what you need?
I think it's easy to forget at this point of the year that what we've seen with Baker over the past several years. I think, obviously he had his most productive season, in this offense, under Kevin, just really as early as last year. Look, I think we've been with Baker for a long period at this point. We know his work ethic, we know his drive. We've seen him as a talented passer in this league, and we're looking forward to him getting healthy and continue to make improvements. And we expect him to bounce back next year.
Do you feel any need to bring in somebody to push him at that position?
So Scott, I think I've mentioned this before in terms of how we look at the offseason. We don't go looking to it and say, hey, we're just going to target you per certain positions. We scout and look at player availability as if we have an expansion team. So the way we go about adding competition or improving the talent base in the roster is largely, maybe not wholly, but largely independent of who's currently on the team.
Yeah, Andrew, I think we've covered the Baker thing here. So I want to ask you just one of the themes that came out of a lot of the player interviews yesterday was the relationship between the offensive players and the defensive players. And not to say that there was internal fighting or anything like that, but just a theme seemed to form with guys talking about the camaraderie and that type of thing. So organizationally, how do you improve that? Because when you look at this season, I mean, there was a stark contrast between the two units. The defense ascended as the season went on, and the offense seemed to descend. So just when you look at that situation, how do you improve that next year so you don't have a repeat?
So a couple of things along those lines, Daryl. It's a good question. I think a year ago I might have mentioned that, generally speaking, every year is unique in the NFL. And the big reason is because regardless of if you make it to the Super Bowl or you're, the 32nd team in football, every team has a fair amount of significant roster turnover. I think it's on average maybe a third per year. So what comes with that is constantly, reinforcing the team culture, karate, because you really do have to work at it from the beginning at every year, because there are a number of guys who won't have been with you the previous season. Now, that being said, I think what you can see when you're not having results is, frustration, right? Everybody puts a ton of time and energy and effort into this thing. And it's frustrating for everybody if you don't reach your goals, which we didn't this season. But that being said, I think shared success, performance, work ethic, like that's really the goal, right? To improve that and make sure that we hit that mark. That's first and foremost, as opposed to anything. And I think that shared success oftentimes, leads to, the chemistry and working relationships. So that's really the focus first and foremost as we go into the next few weeks.
And something else that popped up yesterday, John Johnson had mentioned this, and I know you guys have invested a lot of resources in the player development type of thing with nutritionists, sports science, and things like that. But he did bring it up, and he mentioned maybe you guys should bring in a yoga instructor to help with flexibility, to eliminate some of these soft tissue injuries. I just want to kind of get your take on the prevention of those injuries and what steps you guys can do organizationally, because they really did hit you hard this year to, improve what you already have in place.
Yeah, no, probably two separate things. So John and I actually talked about this, actually yesterday before he left. So you're right. We have made some pretty significant investments within football operations, within player development and sports science. I think the reality of it is, Daryl, with really what we've seen the past 2 years with the tier limits because of COVID protocols in place, you actually do have to make some cuts is probably the wrong word, but probably some decisions, particularly with certain outside practitioners that you wouldn't necessarily normally have those restrictions in a year where you're not playing in a pandemic. So because of those limits, some of the services that we would typically bring in out of the building, we haven't been able to in probably a year or two, but it's something that's certainly top of mind for us. Every year we do go through an injury, and particularly a soft tissue injury audit. And I think our medical and performance groups are pretty good at staying on the cutting edge of those things. But as you alluded to, look, teams that can stay healthy, that's a huge competitive advantage in our sport. And it's something that we want to make sure we're doing everything in our power to do.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for your time. You've talked in the past about roster evaluation all across the board as being your top job. My question is back to quarterback. Do you feel it's your job to look at every option, and if you can upgrade that position, you do so, or is the downside too much risk that word gets out that you are looking into that?
Probably the simple answer to the question is my job is to assemble the best team possible and make sure that we're in a position to compete consistently for the division, to be in the playoffs, and ultimately win a championship. And that's something that we'll strive to do every year.
Hey, Andrew, good to see you. Two quick things on Baker. Will the expectation be on your end that, you guys just move forward with this 5th-year option and see what happens, next season? And then the second thing I wanted to ask you about Baker was, he did publicly criticize play calling twice in the last month. So have you and Kevin heard the things you need to hear with him in your conversations that make you feel like this relationship is going to work moving forward with you guys committing to him the way you have today?
Nate, I probably addressed this a little bit earlier, right?
Back in 30.
We'll expect Baker to bounce back. In terms of any conversations that would happen with me or Baker or Kevin and Baker, really those will stay there. I don't have any concerns in terms of relationship or anything along those lines. I think it's pretty natural to have discussions around scheme as you go into any off season, and those discussions have happened and will continue to happen with the appropriate parties.
You're up.
All right, there's AB. We will have part 2 of his meeting of the media and the state of the Browns coming up here at the top of the hour. Lots of bad advice out there about gambling, from secret methods to picking lottery numbers to betting big when you're on a roll. These myths can lose you money and get you in a lot of trouble. So before you wager, find out what's real and what isn't at keepitfunohio.com. We'll go around the league coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. EOX Vantage is a local presence and a global footprint trusted by some of the world's biggest brands. Let's hear from Ed Shield, Vice President of Skyward Specialty Insurance, on his relationship with EOX Vantage. He has this to say.
I love when we get to hear from Ed.
Dialed in.
Like E.F. Hutton.
Absolutely.
When he speaks.
Listen, I'm telling you, the tools that have been designed by EOX Vantage, those are real business changers. They open the door for all sorts of valuable opportunities and efficiencies. They help our team members stay on the same page while collaborating remotely, make it easy to communicate with customers, cut way down on manual data entry and the associated input errors, and cut hours off processes and response times. Operationally, brand new ball game for us, and I believe it will be for you too. You can learn more at EOX Vantage by visiting www.eoxvantage.com or call 216-298-1616. So the coaching hiring is taken place. So we've got the Bears with Doug Peterson and Brian Flores and Dan Quinn and Matt Elberfluss. These are a lot of the names we've heard through the years. Todd Bowles. Denver looking to interview up to 9 guys for their job. Eric Bieniemy among them. Also, Jared Mayo, Kevin O'Connell, who's with the Rams now, a former Browns assistant, Luke Getsy, who's a quarterback coach of the Packers and the Dolphins, with Brian Daboll as well. Daboll's in for interviews every year and should be based on what he's done. Of the jobs that are open, how do you rank them?
All right, so we've got Miami, Denver, Chicago.
Yep. Minnesota. Jacksonville.
What about the Raiders? Do we count the Raiders? Or
Raiders is open. Yep.
Okay.
Right now, are those it? Are we missing any? Or is that it?
I think that's right.
Those 6?
Yeah.
Miami, Denver, Chicago, Minnesota, Jacksonville, Vegas. So, real quick, before you go, Minnesota and Chicago would have the ability to have complete control, complete autonomy.
Yep.
Everybody else is keeping their general manager to varying degrees, the general manager's power. But in Chicago and Minnesota, it would be similar to the situation when we hired Coach, where it would be, you don't know the order they're going to hire it, but you'll hire somebody first, and then that person will be an influence, whether it's GM or coach. So that's just so that everybody understands what we're dealing with here.
This is actually a very interesting discussion. And you would say,
thank you.
On paper, right, there are so many great pieces in Minnesota, but I don't know that you still have Kirk Cousins after this scenario. Like, I don't know what their feeling is there. So Jacksonville has the best young quarterback of all of these.
Yep.
But what do you have around it, and how desirable is Jacksonville to attract talent, and do you have any faith that they're going to get this right? I don't know. Miami feels like it's a playoff-ready team.
Right. And they have the ammo for Deshaun Watson.
Denver feels like if you plop a quarterback in here, this is easily the best team of the bunch.
Yep.
Easily.
They're a Super Bowl contender. Like, if they got Wilson or Rodgers, they'd be a Super Bowl contender.
Yes. Chicago, I like Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
I like David Montgomery. They need to, get some pieces in their receiving core. They've got the makings of a very good defense. Not a bad opportunity there. Minnesota, again, you have Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson and, some good pieces around them. That's not a bad option. Raiders are a playoff team right now.
Right now.
And they've done that under incredible tumults and turmoil and losing key pieces. They're not to mention their head coach, all of it. If I knew I was having a quarterback of top 14-ish, Denver would be the most desirable to me. Now you'd say, well, wait a second. You got to deal with Mahomes. You got to deal with Justin Herbert twice.
Yeah.
But that team feels like it is a quarterback away from being really good.
So how would you weigh this? So you went all quarterback was your and rightfully so, the most important position in all the sports. How do you weigh organizational stability to this? Because, for example, Minnesota has had incredible organizational stability. Yep. The Wilf family is incredibly supportive and loyal, and they ride with people for a long time. Some of these other places, it's new guys every couple years, and you're bounced. I think you're right to do it the way you're doing it, but you also would have to consider if you had the pick of the litter, you'd also have to consider organizational stability, and then where do you want to live? How do you want to go about your business? Sure. Those type of things. So you factor all that stuff in to try to get to the bottom of it. And like the two on here that are the most appealing in terms of two great places to live. Denver's a little bit in tumult when it comes to the ownership. We don't know what's going to happen with that ownership structure. George Payton was just hired, So, he's there. But beyond that, you don't know what's going to happen with ownership there. And then Miami with Ross, that has not been stable. I mean, that's been
you're at the whims.
Right.
Here.
But you have a lot of talent, and you have the ammo. You're desirable. People want to play there. There's a tremendous fan base down there for the Dolphins that doesn't probably get the respect. It's a Dolphins town for sure, especially when the University of Miami's not good. And you have this apple of the eye of the league in Deshaun Watson, who could be available and would probably like to play there.
And it is not it doesn't feel like the toughest division in football. You like the Patriots. Of course, you do like the Bills, but it doesn't feel like you're stepping into an untenable situation. The thing that I don't understand about Minnesota, that I don't know if you guys have read more about it or heard more about it, if you were talking about this on your other program, I don't understand why Spielman's out. Like, I understand why Zimmer would be out, but I felt like Spielman's been a pretty good GM.
He has been. And that's what I mean. That's what's so interesting about them, and we were talking about the stability of the organization. I mean, Zim had been there a long time.
Sure.
Spielman had been there a long time. Peyton was there a long time. Stefanski was there a long time.
Yeah.
Like, these were kind of the pillars of their organization, and they'd been this, and they'd won a lot. Haven't ever won it all, but they'd won a lot, been very respected with very different incarnations of the way they went about their business, but always successful. I don't know. Maybe they just felt like they wanted to restart there entirely. I mean, I think whatever you do in Minnesota, it's tied to Cousins. Like, do you try to get more drops out of that grape, or do you push and try to figure out a way out of it? But I mean, that would be a spot. I mean, remember Favre paratrooped in there,
and let's not forget,
and got him to an NFC Championship game, and that's not that long ago.
No.
And they have a roster that's loaded.
Let's not forget too that if Aaron Rodgers were to move on from Green Bay, then that division all of a sudden is wide open, and maybe the easiest path to a division title of any of these teams, which would apply to both Chicago and Minnesota. The idea of getting to have Trevor Lawrence for his entire career is still very appealing to me. So from that standpoint alone, is Jacksonville number one? Maybe. You feel they're going to write you a big check. And the good news when you're a coach is when you get fired, you get all the money that you were promised. It's 100%
he's at Jack's
guaranteed.
Beach. He's at Jack's Beach. He's at Sawgrass.
I'm at Sawgrass?
Oh, yeah. It's tough.
There are pools at the stadium.
You guys are aware. You've been down there. I was in that part of the country for a while. It's a remarkable thing that they put an NFL team there.
Yeah.
It's really a stunning thing, especially when they did. Talking about 25, 30, almost 30 years ago when they made that decision, the first year, 95, 94, something like that, for Jacksonville and Carolina. It's remarkable that they went to Jacksonville and put the team there instead of Orlando. And if they had to be in Florida, that they went there instead of there. But they did. I think the Jacksonville situation, I mean, you have an owner who clearly is willing to spend whatever, blank check on that front. You've got to get those uniforms sorted out because they can't ever get that figured out. But beyond that.
They were great. They didn't need to do anything to them. They did great unis.
I know, but they keep messing with them all the time.
Vegas is also appealing to be in Vegas. Silver and black. The head coach of the Raiders. Like, to me, from just a
little Shadow Mountain, or no? What's it called? Is it Shadow? What's the golf course at the Wynn there? That's the one where is it?
I think so.
Shadow
Mountain.
Yeah, Shadow Mountain. Yeah, at the Wynn. And I'm sure like the private courses there are stunning that we don't even know about because nobody knows about them.
No shortage of good restaurants.
No shortage of that. Yeah. I don't know if I could do like the Strip or like
you
wouldn't. You wouldn't deal with it, but that would be a lot to deal with. That would be one thing you'd be signing up for. There is constant headaches with your players, though. You'd be constantly dealing with that, and we've seen that. I mean, that's at the highest level. I mean, there's a lot to deal with off the field there that you're signing up for.
For sure. I think. Look, if I knew what I could get into Denver, that would be 1. Miami is probably 2. Jacksonville 3, Raiders 4, and then just because you don't know what's going on in Chicago, Minnesota, those would be the bottom 2. I like Minnesota. Like, if I had Justin Fields in Minnesota with that roster, Minnesota would be number 1.
Yeah, and the other thing about Chicago is like if they do that stadium and they do a dome,
well then Chicago becomes
then it's a different level. I mean, you win in Chicago and you never pay for anything ever. You're king of the city. That's a big city to be king of.
Isn't it interesting here? You've got warm weather, dome, cold half the year in Denver, where it's still pretty nice, but cold.
Cold, yeah, in December, for sure.
Also,
but you have sun in Denver. You have sun, which
taxes,
is nice.
Jacksonville and Miami are pretty good from a tax standpoint.
Yeah, they have a right.
How do they not keep that guy?
Oh, I think they will now. I mean, how do you not keep Carr? Like you mean the coach?
Both.
Coach and Carr.
Both.
Yeah, run it back. And just do a 2-year deal. Do it short if he falls on his face and you move on. But maximize where you're at right now. Well, you'd ask those questions. Watson is the wild card in 2 of these spots because both Miami and Denver are in position, and Miami's actually in better position to get Watson. They have more assets that they could trade. I think they have multiple first-round picks this year, don't they? Does it Miami?
The other 2 teams that I know nobody's really talking about that I think could be in position would be the Jets or the Giants if he wants to go to New York and go to that.
You mean Watson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Jets could be like, here, we have 2 ones this year and take Wilson and give us Watson.
Yeah, you could. You absolutely could. The Giants are a good point. It feels like Russell Wilson's trying to get to the Giants is what it seems like, is that he's trying to get there.
New York.
Yeah, and be a part of that.
I thought he just said he wants to win Super Bowls with the Seahawks. I saw it. They tweeted it.
I guess the thing that what I come away from with this list is there are several really attractive jobs.
You could talk yourself into
every one of
them.
These. I agree with you. Every single one of them.
There isn't a dog.
Because the worst one we're saying is Minnesota, and they've been the biggest consistent winner with incredibly patient ownership. That's a great organization.
Great stadium.
Great stadium. Great city. Yeah. Yeah, that was a surprising one, but the one thing that's weird about Miami is you do have to ask yourself, why haven't they consistently won there since Marino?
It is amazing.
Why? What's the problem? They've been pretty middling for 30 years. And it feels like that's a place everybody'd want to play.
Yeah.
Cool uniforms, they fixed the stadium, ownership's got a lot of money.
They are good unis.
Yeah, they're great, especially when they wear the throwback. The throwback's perfect. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that in many of these cases, and I don't know if it's because of our age and so it's what we grew up with, but in many cases, the simple answer in a lot of these uniform situations is just wear your throwbacks.
It's not hard.
Right?
It's not hard.
I mean, the reason the Raiders and the Niners we think are the best because they are still in their throwbacks. The Bears are still in.
Bears, Packers, Steelers.
Those are all
of them. They're
all
the
best.
Raiders, yeah.
Us now.
Cowboys, us now. Yeah, it isn't hard. If wear what you used to wear, it's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. That's great jobs. It's great jobs.
It is. Listen, the league is fun. Whether or not we got the result we were looking for, which we did not, it's a fun league.
It is, and the offseason is going to be remarkable, and it's going to be even more so because I think the quarterback derby is going to be crazy because there simply are not quarterbacks that are draftable. So there's all of those things to consider. Coming up next, part 2 of our conversation with Andrew Barry. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Weather's cold outside. Wouldn't a nice hot bath or shower feel amazing? Why not transform your bathroom into a custom bath that'll feel like a spa? Let the Bath Authority make this a reality for you at a fraction of the cost of the competitors. The Bath Authority is Cleveland's premier bath and shower remodeler with expert factory-trained installers. Call now for $500 off your next custom bath or shower remodel. Call 216-220-8399 or go to thebathauthority.com now. Affordability is going to meet quality there. It's the largest selection of bath projects, all made in the United States. Change your bathroom from outdated to outstanding. Acrylic tubs, insulate, keep that heat in the tub, to shower conversions. They do it all. They're the best in the business. Superior products, expert installers. Speaking of experts, Andrew Berry, an expert on talent acquisition. Here is part 2 of his meeting with the media.
All right.
You're down 11.5.
Directly, are you comfortable playing Baker in 2022 without a new contract?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable. We have a lot of guys that, you know, will have gone into their final year or something along those lines. I mean, that's not something that really goes into the calculus for us. Every year you'll have guys that are on expiring deals.
Lame duck quarterback, is it uncomfortable?
Yeah, I don't know that I would categorize it that way, Tony. I mean, again, you have a number of players across positions that are entering the final years of their deals. So that's not something that's really top of mind for me.
Yeah, AB, I know you've mentioned kind of looking over the whole roster. Could be chicken or the egg with Baker's injury, but do you need to see more out of the receiving core, and is that a priority to bring some talent in there this offseason?
Yeah, it's a good question, Matt. You know, again, I think that's really across the roster. That's what the next couple of weeks are going to be for. Look, I told you guys at the bye week that, you know, I thought that you know, our passing offense was too inconsistent at that point, and you know that I think remains to be the case as we exit the year. So, you know, we'll pull it apart and look at it, and obviously make the necessary you know, changes and improvements that are needed, whether it's externally, internally, or schematically.
And then you had great success again this year with a lot of one-year deals. Anthony Walker, I know Jadeveon Clowney's probably the biggest one, and Malik Jackson. Is it fair to say that that's something that we could see more out of in the future, or the one-year deals on some veteran guys?
I wouldn't maybe read too much into that, Matt. I think it really depends on what the contractual status is for players elsewhere on your roster. And again, where you have you know, where you have your cap dollars invested. So that's a big part of our cap and cash planning in the upcoming weeks, and you obviously try and match it to player availability as well.
I'm going to ask you a draft question. Do you think spending a draft pick on a kicker, is that something that you would consider, and how much do you think you have to really look at that position?
Would consider anything, Jeff. My reaction isn't any hard and fast rule. I think it probably depends on the player, and I think it depends on you know, other ways that you can acquire talent at the position. But no, I wouldn't rule it out.
Hey, Andrew, I wanted to ask about Greg Newsome and JOK. I mean, do you feel like they had the rookie seasons, like living up to the hype, especially JOK? You guys aggressively traded up to make sure you got him in last year's draft. So just how you think they did this year, and how you see their futures going forward here.
Yeah, I think both those guys, they played well. They grew as the season progressed. I think there's still a lot that each guy can improve. You know, and we've obviously had that conversation with both individuals as they enter the off season. You know, good rookie year, but you know, they're going off on you know, into the next several months with targeted areas that they can work on, so that they can take a step moving forward and be a big piece of what helps us get to the playoffs in 2022.
Hey, Andrew, I've got two for you.
Okay.
The first is that there was a report yesterday that Kwesi is getting an interview request in Chicago, I believe it was. So I guess, first of all, you're granting that request, and then secondly, you know, how important is it for you to see guys from your front office go on and have those opportunities?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dan, and I will tell you that I am incredibly excited and proud of both Kwesi and Glenn for, you know, having the opportunity to interview for, you know, one of the 31 other franchises. Of course, we will always grant requests. Now, again, in fairness, not that it's our choice to deny it, but regardless, we're thrilled when we have people from our organization that you have the chance to interview for you know, one of these opportunities, and I know those guys will represent themselves well. And any owner who was looking to hire a general manager, those guys will do a phenomenal job. I'm just glad they're interviewing for an NFC team so I can root for them if they get it.
And then I do have another Baker question, and this just has to do with, him playing on that final year of his contract. There could be the assumption that maybe that there isn't a belief that he could be a guy long term for this organization. Is it fair to wonder if this is sort of another prove it year for Baker going into that fifth year?
I think the reality of it is, any of us who work in the NFL, every year's a prove it year. To the contract question in general, Dan, I think you guys probably know me well enough that I kind of march the beat of my own drum in terms of whatever contract precedents are out there. So we'll deal with each situation on an individual basis.
Hey, Andrew, you told us at the bye week that you expected to see Baker's best play over the final month of the season. What did you see in that final month?
Yeah, I think in fairness, right, misses 2 games, plays 1 game well, 1 game probably not so well, and then probably the 3rd game that he played gets COVID, out 2 weeks, is there the day of the game. So, certainly those 5 games didn't go the way that we hoped or anticipated, but we expect them to bounce back.
And I think Cam asked you about JOK and Greg Newsome. How about Hudson and Schwartz? I mean, I think those guys were always developmental players, but what did you see, and what do you need to see from those guys going forward?
Yeah, I think for all rookies, or I should say maybe for the overwhelming majority of rookies, and certainly within our class, we saw progress, expect them to take a step forward. I think, James really got baptism by fire throughout this year. And I actually think he came along nicely and particularly ended his season in a really strong manner against the Cincinnati game. I think it's tough for a guy who's a former D lineman, 4th round pick, played left tackle, right tackle for us. But it's good experience. I think Anthony, probably the best thing for him was he battled a lot of adversity this year, right? Had the injury in camp, came back, fought his way to kind of a part-time role, had the concussion, middle of the year that obviously kept him out for several weeks, and really kind of battled his way back to get some meaningful steps at the end. So those guys have a year under their belt now of NFL life. Good conversations with both before they left yesterday. They are highly focused, know the areas that they need to improve, and we're looking forward to seeing what progress they can make when they come back during the spring.
Yes, Andrew, can you address, speaking of coming under some heat, Kevin Stefanski took a lot of heat for the play calling and the process of things this season. And so just wondering, will you guys as an organization address whether that's the right way to go going forward? What did you feel about the play calling? And do you sometimes wonder if maybe he wouldn't be better just overseeing the whole operation? What's your view on all that?
Yeah, I think, as what I mentioned a little bit earlier, Mary Kay, in terms of like looking at everything, because you have to be, we really do have to go through everything, because we didn't meet our, our level of expectations this year. That all being said, feel good about Kevin as a play caller. I think that's something that is one of his strengths. There are a lot of things that we'll need to improve over the next several months, and it really all has to work together. I don't think it's any one thing or any silver bullet, and that's why we're going to tear it apart and plot the best path to go. Whether it's personnel wise, schematically wise, or operationally, with an eye towards improvement in 2022.
Yeah, Andrew, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but can you expand on what you like about Baker as the leader, as the quarterback of the Browns moving forward, and his fit within this team?
Yeah, I think Baker, he's team oriented, he's a competitor, he's super tough, and he truly wants what's best for the team, and really to take the steps that he needs to improve to become the quarterback that we know that he can become. So guys that are self-motivated, they're team-oriented, and they're tough. You certainly like that profile across any position.
So just to clarify, from what you said earlier, if an opportunity came up to pursue another quarterback, are you saying that's not something you would be interested in, given that you have Baker under contract through next season, or is it too soon to say because you haven't done your evaluations yet, and you don't necessarily know what those opportunities might even be?
Yeah, I know there's a ton of speculation out there. I'm not really going to get into that, Jake. I think I've been fairly straightforward here on this.
Andrew, regarding Jadeveon Clowney, how did you think he fit in his first year here? See a guy you want back, and then the fact that he played so well, will that make it tougher, you think, to re-sign him?
I think JD had a really good season for us. Was very productive, run and pass, disruptive player. I think he paired nicely with the guys that we had up front, obviously with Miles being at the forefront. And he had a good year. I think he did the things that we envisioned when we signed him. And so good season, fit in nicely for us. And the next several weeks we'll see kind of what the future holds with all our guys across the roster.
Hey, Andrew, I just kind of along those lines. Now this guy is under contract, but I just want to know what you thought of Denzel Ward's season, what that could mean for him. If you view him as a cornerstone type guy that you want to, try to keep longer.
Yeah, I think Denzel put together a fine year. He made a number of really big plays for us at critical moments in the season. Obviously, we know he's a local kid, drafted and developed here, and he put together a really strong season for us, Nate. So we're pleased with that.
Okay, and Dreary has been the key guy for you guys over the years. Obviously, he has a big contract here. What is the outlook for Jarvis as it relates to being a member of the Browns?
I think everybody on this call knows how much respect that we have for Jarvis Landry, and really what he's meant for our team and organization over the past several years. He's been a productive player for us.
Come back.
That we traded for him, and he's been really a key piece in terms of how the team and organization has evolved over the last several years.
You're up. All right, there you hear General Manager Andrew Berry, state of the state. You think about his first two off seasons, and you think about the objectives, and then checking off objectives box by box. As a Browns fan, you ought to feel very good about checking off those boxes again this offseason.
Yeah, and I think the box this offseason is getting this passing game.
That's it. It's one box.
To an NFL level.
Right.
And then there's, little pieces around Clowney, I think is obviously a big piece of maintaining what you want to do as a defense. But that's it. That's the box. And so that's what I expect the Browns to hit very, very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. We will go entirely around Week 18. We'll also go around the league. A lot of news around the league here today. We will do that coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Rumpke Waste Recycling, family owned and operated. Whether you join them as a customer or as an employee, you'll become part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. As we continue around the league, heading into Wild Card Weekend, Frank Wright, as we mentioned, will not commit to Carson Wentz going forward as the Colts starting quarterback in 2022. We have 6 games this weekend. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah,
6
super
games?
Wild Card Weekend.
Yes, sir.
First
Man,
Monday
that's
night.
fun.
First Monday night Wild Card game as well.
Boy, that's a pretty big disservice.
Yeah,
Well,
playing on Monday
but
night,
we
you
don't-
lose a whole day.
I don't know what, like, next weekend is all TBD.
Well, I would think
So
they
it's
would
like-
try to do whoever plays on Monday night would have to play Sunday night if there is a Sunday night game, or a Sunday afternoon at the very least. You can't play Saturday.
I just
Can you? I mean, that's
don't-
not right.
I don't get the Monday. Like, put it on Saturday night, or
I just don't understand how you're going to have a team in the second round of the playoffs at a disadvantage. You know what I mean?
Of course, I think it's crazy.
Yeah, you should do a triple header on Saturday and a triple header on Sunday.
Yeah.
So what's the order of these? So go Cincinnati, Vegas Saturday early, then it goes Buffalo, New England Saturday night, and then the Sunday early is Philly. Is that Philly?
Tampa Bay.
That's Philly, Tampa
then
Bay.
Niners, Dallas.
Which that'll be a monster.
Then Kansas City, Pittsburgh. And then Rams, Cards.
Okay, so if the Rams were to win, they would play at Philly or at Tampa Bay the next week, and Tampa Bay would have what amounts to a 32-hour head
advantage.
start.
Yeah.
Is what that amounts to on them if they played them on Sunday.
Yeah, and you're talking travel.
Well, true. I mean, yeah, you're
You're
traveling across the
probably
country.
leaving Friday.
No, they're not traveling coach, but they're still traveling across the country to play that game in Tampa. So you're losing the 32 hours, and then you're losing flight time to get out there. That was a pretty big loss for the Rams on Sunday.
Significant loss, yes.
That was an incredibly – I mean, that had to be troubling based on, the way they had played and all they'd been through. We talked about 40 guys on the COVID list, and they got through it.
And they were cruising.
They were, yeah. When you look at, that's a lot of fun games. I like Cincinnati's spot. I do. I like them playing Vegas at home.
Then Tennessee.
The idea you don't have to play Allen or Mahomes till
the chance, though, that it's going to go all chalk, though,
no,
feels
slim.
pretty rare.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially in light of the stats we discussed in the break.
Give the people, give the people the best you can.
I got to pull it back up. So this is if you had placed $100 on the money line for every underdog in the wild card round in the last 4 years total, you'd be up $1,145. Underdogs are 10-8 straight up and 15-3 against the spread the last 4 years in the wild card round. He also notes the under is 12-6 for those keeping score.
Jeez, you have to pay attention to that when it comes time for scores.
Oh boy, and the over-unders that.
The over-unders continue as that we have overtime in the over-unders.
Or do
Great.
we?
Some
bought stock and Kleenex. A lot of tears from Zegura over the last 24 hours. A lot of crying.
Why do you just pick the scab? Just picks it.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, no. He started it today by tweeting at me.
Oh, you came at him on
somebody
social?
Somebody wanted to know if we should just start counting all quarterback hits as sacks because they touched the quarterback. I said that's a great question for Gibbs.
Hold on.
It was funny. It
Hold
was
on.
it really was because I've
how
seen split. I have seen support of Gibbe on the social as well.
Which is insane. And then I pointed out the deal breaker, which is that last week against the Steelers,
right,
we had 2 sacks, 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles, 0 fumbles,
right.
and it was under 4.1.
Under 4.1.
But had you had those 2 forced fumbles,
it would have been over.
So he does this great question for BGSU Gibbs.
That's right.
I
That's what I said.
12:05 p.m. Zegura's still crying. Rinse, repeat.
Outrageous. I'm typically thriving at 12.
By the way, you're so BGSU Gibbs.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
We want it at Gibbe.
At Gibbe is what you should be.
Nope.
Like you have a brand.
Not at all.
You are at Gibbe.
I heard that there's a certain NBA Jam shirt in the works, and
So-
they don't know who BGSU Gibbs is, but they know
They
who
know
Gibbe
Gibbe.
is and his.
Wouldn't that be amazing
partner.
on an NBA Jam shirt that just said Gibbe?
Gibbe?
That
And-
would be
and
amazing.
partner.
Partner.
Blank.
Zegura replies while
Can't
I
even
don't
look
know,
at him
maybe
anymore.
he's in his car. His car's driving for him. Congratulations on all your successes. Let's
Thank
not
you.
let
Didn't feel like a
facts get in the
congratulations.
way, Gibby. I said, why don't you buy stock and Kleenex, kids? A lot of crying today.
It just spilled out. It spilled
Just-
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
If you
we'll
got
have
hate
more
in that
fun.
heart, let that hate out, Gibby.
We'll have more fun with that in the coming weeks. It's a fun slate.
Can we just say, from a crying
Yeah.
standpoint, just one to tie one bow on this?
Sure.
This is only an issue because this man that we all loved in a sad season that we wanted Chesty Gibby to be parading around forever.
All we wanted was him running around here in a feather boa with some sort of hype man music. That's all we wanted.
And it was literally
set up.
I rolled the red carpet out for Chesty Gibby, and he refused so adamantly that we're now in this predicament.
I'm going to earn it by totally screwing the pooch in Week 18.
Oh, my gosh. It was all there for you, Gibby. It was all there for you. All right, we'll go one thought on Week 18 coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. OBM, Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns. They have all the X's and O's for your office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Week 18. You guys lived it more closely than anybody. What did you think of 18 versus 17?
Well, unfortunately for us,
felt like a really long season.
Yeah, for us, it was our game, without any stakes. And so you got, Case Keenum against Brandon Allen, which was not Baker Mayfield against Joe Burrow for the fourth time in their young careers. So it didn't feel like a game of consequence. But when you got to watch the games of consequence, I thought they were great.
The games of consequence were, but there was a lot of bad ball.
Of course.
There was a lot of bad
ball.
Sure. Do you guys think that the NFL should move up their season a week so that they're done a little earlier, or do you like the idea of playing that second week in January?
Yes, I do. Why not get another week of good weather? Why wouldn't you, why not?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
So that would be simply starting Labor Day weekend, which the NFL has gifted to college football for a bunch of years now, and college football's taking full advantage.
One time, it did start Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, in the old days. That's true, it did. Why? I wonder if the NFL would ever move it back to Labor Day weekend. You wouldn't have to play the Monday nighter. You could still play. I'm sure they're worried about ratings or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like people would watch football Labor Day weekend. They watch college. Those ratings are great.
Yeah.
I mean, are you impacting? I mean, how many big games are on Sunday? Opening weekend for college football? 2? 3?
Oh, yeah. A lot of times college football punts on Sunday. College football will play big games Thursday. Then they'll do Friday. Then there's Saturday. There's usually a big one Saturday night, like a doubleheader. Then one, like this year, I think it was like Ole Miss and Louisville on Sunday night or something like that. And then there's usually a Monday nighter, but you could own it if you wanted to. I mean,
just start playing.
Play earlier. Yeah, I agree with you.
Ultimately, you're going to add another game to make it even.
And that gets you back to where you are now anyway.
I mean, you can't be playing to the middle of January.
I agree. I mean, I would like it done. I like the old calendar. It might be just because you're used to it, but I like the old calendar of like last week of December, then that's it. Into the first year, then that's it. And then we're on to January's playoffs,
right?
As opposed to playing into it. So just move it up.
I mean,
I'm with you 100%.
When we were originally looking at all this at the start of the year and thinking what might be in February, like Valentine's weekend, hon. How does SoCal sound?
Is that the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
it's the 13th. Yeah, it's too.
That's late.
I don't like that. I mean, the Super Bowl forever is like January 28th.
Yeah.
Like that forever was that. February 13th. That's way.
That's really late.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not crazy about that. I think that's an easy fix too.
I just think you get a better weather game out of it. Get 1 week of better weather around the country.
Right. I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about the games that were great, but there were a lot of games that were played in front of half empties, around the country in bad weather. So that's not a win.
No.
Yeah. I think it'd be a simple fix. All right. One thought from the final week. Go get it.
One thought, kids. Raiders 35, Los Angeles 32 in overtime. Bishop, you lead it off.
I think the thing here, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about all of this on yesterday's show, but I think the big takeaway here is Justin Herbert's ascent was stopped short because of what happened in that game. Because this year, and this isn't to mean that his talent or year is diminished at all. It's not, because he's not going to get any blame for this at all. But he played himself into the Mahomes-Allen category. That level, Rodgers, those guys are older, but the best young quarterbacks. He played himself into that. And the idea that guy's home is a shame. And that's a really talented roster that's home, and they shouldn't be,
Zegura.
No, we should be seeing them in the playoffs, and the Chargers all year have kind of lived by the sword, died by the sword, and I think much was made of their decision to go for it on fourth down at their own 18. They did the same thing against us, and converting it allowed them to win that game. And so you're going to – and your philosophy, I guess, for them in that case, they said we're not changing it just because this is the last game. That's how we've played all year. Maybe they're going to have to investigate, subjectively or trying to figure out situationally when to apply things like this. But unbelievable game. So much drama. Herbert, elite, electric, and then that timeout will loom large forever.
Yep.
Could have been Herbert Burrow.
Oh, gosh, jeez.
That would have been worth watching.
And
Bigger choke job.
No, that wouldn't have worked, right? Because they would have had to play the New England.
It would have been New England
Bengals, and it would have been Chargers Bills, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Oh, well, I would do Herbert.
Well, that would Herbert Allen would have the
and
same
Raiders,
thing.
Chiefs.
Yeah, so it would have been the Chargers playing in 9 degrees in Buffalo.
That's what we're getting.
Bigger choke job,
degrees.
Colts or Chargers?
Colts,
Remember,
1,000.
No. Don't forget, the Chargers lost to Houston.
You mean down the stretch? Still
Yeah.
Colts.
You're
a 15.5-point favorite. Everybody knows the score. All you have to do is win in Jacksonville.
The Texans have been pretty good. I mean, they had taken it to
frisky.
the Patriots at a time when the Patriots were good, and they end up coming back and win that game. But Tennessee, let's not forget, wanted to win this game on Sunday,
and they
beat them 28-25.
Yeah, no. Yeah, they've been frisky.
Up next, 49ers taking down the Rams, 27-24 in overtime. Zegura, one thought.
No hot seat.
Yeah, that didn't age well.
Didn't age well. My one thought is that the 49ers, I think, are more likely to proceed in the postseason than the Rams based on this result.
It is very helpful for them, no doubt, and I think the Niners are a dangerous team because of their combination of their ability to run the ball, their ability to make plays in the passing game, but then their defense has been, especially up front, has been dominant. The other thing we need to note is Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It sure is, yeah.
Receptions, yards, touchdowns.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the 49ers would play, I guess, further than the Rams would be tricky, but I mean, I really like them to beat Dallas. That's a dome, and then they would have to go to Green Bay, which will be tough.
Wait for that game.
Yeah, it'll be a fun game. But they'll have to go to Green Bay, which will be tough for Garoppolo in that conditions.
That's a seminal matchup of your childhood.
It is, yeah.
Up next.
That's right.
Jacksonville, 26. Colts, 11. Bishop.
Oh, I just think for the Colts, it just lives in infamy. Like, you just have to – if you go from being a team that rallied and played well and was going to be really dangerous that people thought could make a move in the AFC to one of the most shameful losses, and I think it makes you reevaluate everything if you're Indy. And I think they are. It's stunning. It's as stunning as any loss in the last month.
We kept getting those updates in game, and I don't – all of us shocked. From the booth down to the field, Zegura, Donovan, we all were just like, they're going to come back.
I got one little kid on my team who's a Steelers fan, basketball team.
I'd make
his whole family wears Steelers stuff always, like all the time. They always are sticking it to me, and his dad's giving him updates in game and he comes over and he goes, Coach, the Colts are losing, and I went, what? What, are you kidding me? Like, it's impossible.
And it was a beating. I mean, we're talking about it was 7-0. Then it's 13-3 at the half. Then it's 23-3 at the end of 3.
Yeah.
23-3.
Right.
And for Trevor Lawrence, I think for the Jags, what a nice end to that season, which was one of great
He deserves it.
By the way, it's hard to even remember that Urban Meyer was their coach this year.
Right. Seems so long ago.
Yeah, that happened.
Right.
So he finishes 23 of 32, 223, 2 touchdowns, and just it was domination. It's stunning.
All right, Zegura, Dolphins 33, Patriots 24.
I mean, you would think sweeping Bill Belichick would get you a chance to keep your job. I think the big story here is shocking dismissal of Brian Flores. Shocking dismissal. I mean, they finished 9-8 after, like we said, they're the only team in NFL history to have a 7-game losing streak and a 7-game winning streak in the same season. They were 1-7, right?
Yeah.
And they finished 9-8. You fire the coach,
right?
I mean,
and he was 10-6 last year.
I don't get it.
They got a lot of young talent that likes playing for him. There's obviously more to that, and it has to do with Tua and all of that. But it's wild.
Can I just say real quick? Also, shout out to Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson comes into this late in the season, a couple 100-yard rushing games for the Miami Dolphins.
Good for him.
Fine, man.
I also think on New England's front, a little bit of the shine wore off of that offense as it went along. Like
they are like some other teams, and you could say us at times, where there's a very particular formula they must follow to win. It involves them having the lead. It involves them playing great defense, being able to run the football, and connecting on pass plays when they're there. But if they have to throw themselves to victory, they're not a team that can do that.
Yeah.
Up next, guys, the Steelers, 16. Ravens, 13. Squealers somehow find a way into the playoffs. Bishop.
Defies logic. It just defies logic. They were so limited.
Both of their games against us.
I know, but they won both. And the fact that Tomlin's never had a losing record, the fact that Ben Roethlisberger gets to play in another playoff game, I mean, they're going to get drilled by Kansas City.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they just did.
Right. You have to tip your hat to their culture and the way that they're we talked about clutch meter They have that in spades. They just do. And I don't know, it's maddening. It's maddening to me because they are not good.
I mean, if you just said on the most important play of their season to keep it alive, it would be Roethlisberger to Ray McLeod on a 4th down, and that's how they kept their – I mean, it's just – this is a game Najee Harris was limited to 28 yards rushing, got banged up. Snell took 12 carries for 20. I mean, they ran 30 times for 79 yards against the Ravens. The Ravens ran 36 times for 250 and a touchdown and lost.
Yeah.
Scored 13 points. Wow.
Zegura, Lions 37, Packers 30. I'm happy to see the Lions.
Yeah, good for the Lions. They've been frisky and competitive all year, and you finally get DeAndre Swift back, and he gets into the end zone. Goff throws a couple of touchdowns for you in this one. Look, Green Bay would have won this game if they kept Aaron Rodgers in. I think that's plain to see, but they pull him out, and it was competitive, by the way, when he got pulled out. I think they were trailing.
Yeah,
but great win for the Lions. Way to go.
Has anyone won bigger this year than Aaron Rodgers?
No.
With the way Jordan Love has played,
no.
The way that he's played. I mean, he has all the leverage, all the power.
Well, yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, it was a weird off-season, weird in-season, some of the stuff. But still, I don't know anyone's won bigger than him.
Just sit back, relax, strap on your seatbelts, kids.
Yep.
Up next, Tampa Bay takes down Carolina 41-17. Beau Bishop, are you surprised Matt Rule still has a job?
No, because it was 10 years, $75 million on the deal to get him from Baylor, and ownership really liked him down there. I think the crazier thing is saying go hire a superstar coordinator. Like, that's ridiculous. That's what Rule is. That's why you're paying him $7.5 million a year, is for him to be that guy. So the idea, well, you had one. It was, by the way, it was Joe Brady.
Yeah,
and you ran him off. So
3 more coaches.
Their whole thing, they clearly bet on that they were going to have Deshaun Watson this year, and when that failed, they did not have another plan.
And
bad injury luck for them, too.
You feel that Darnold was just, unfortunately, it feels like he was ruined, and he's in a very, very difficult position, and McCaffrey can't stay healthy. You pay McCaffrey to be your whole show, right? And
can't stay healthy.
He can't stay on the field.
J.C. Horn was unbelievable, then he gets hurt.
Yep.
Just bad luck.
Up next, the Bills take down the Jets 27-10. This game was close for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo
Let me tell you something.
Get going offensively.
It was a garbage last-second touchdown that got the cover for Uncle Beau here in the scores. Much to my chagrin, I was sitting at a nice 16 and a hook.
You were,
and it was 17. They scored 14 unanswered in the fourth quarter. Remember, they just had to win this game.
That's it.
That was my theory.
You were right to have that theory. I'm very interested to see what Buffalo does in the postseason, because it feels like this year things turned for them when they came back against Tampa Bay on, was it Monday or Sunday night when they came back against Tampa Bay? They didn't win, but showed some guts in that. But by and large this year, they've lost to the good teams and whipped the bad teams. So what does this look like? Like, playing New England to me would seem to be favorable for them at their place, but we'll see.
We'll see. In this cold as well, because last time there was some weather, New England did beat them. One thing that's interesting, though, is that Devin Singletary, last 4 games, he's given you 86 yards or more 3 times. He's got 110 yards in the win over Atlanta, and he's rushed for a touchdown in 4 straight games with 5 total during that span. He had 7 on the season. So they maybe have discovered something on the ground that might give them a little bit of balance there, because that would be important, I think, for their offense, especially in the playoffs.
Up next, the Saints beating Beau Bishop's favorite team as the Falcons go home for the season. Saints 30, Falcons 20. Bishop.
So I was thinking about this from the perspective of Matt Ryan. So the Falcons made the Super Bowl. He won the MVP in 2016, right? Almost 5,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 picks. Great. That's with Kyle, right? And so then it goes, you start to look at what he's been, and they've continued to just stick with him and try to figure it out. So they went 11-5 that year. They went 10-6, 7-9, 7-8, 4-12, 7-10. Many instances he's led the league in completions or attempts, like they're throwing it all over the place. 67% passer this year, 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks. It's a long way to get around to. I think you've done this. Like, it's time for him to go play somewhere else.
If he's got it. I'm not sure he's got it.
But I don't know he doesn't. Like, he's still – I mean, last year, for crying out loud, he's 4,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 picks. This year he's a 67% passer, 4,000 yards, 20-12. That's not great.
And with no Calvin Ridley.
But no Ridley.
Julio Jones.
No Ridley,
Russell
no Jones.
Gage is the number 1 receiver.
With Look what they were doing at running back this year, too. I mean, offensive line's not great. Like, in the right circumstances, Matt Ryan viable? Does he become one of those guys who comes out here? When I think of that, that's what I think of. And good job out of Sean Payton, because he was
tremendous coaching.
Almost made the playoffs playing 4 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, tremendous coaching.
If not for that Monday night debacle when they didn't have a quarterback.
By the way, Ditka. The record stands. Pitts fell short.
Good for Ditka, man.
Ditka.
That's incredible.
I told you they wouldn't get it.
Good for Ditka, man.
Ditka.
Up next, Seahawks 38, Cardinals 30. The Seahawks spoil Arizona's bid to win that NFC West.
All right, so did Russ tank the season out to just end his time there and then say
Feels
the last
like
few weeks, let me show you let me remind you.
I think it's
I'm
in play.
Still Russell Wilson, because it does feel like it. Last
2
weeks were his best 2 games of the year.
Well, by the way, it coincides with him. Did you see what Rashad Penny has done?
23 $1.90 in this one.
Rashad Penny for the last 5 weeks, 137 2 scores, 135 in a score, 170 in 2 scores, 190 in a score.
Yes, and 8.6 yards a carry, 7.9, 6.8, 8.3.
Yeah, pretty good.
You see their starting running back next year? They drafted him at the end of the first round, I want to say, right? Wasn't he?
He was out of San Diego State. He was either first or early second. I can't remember, but he was, and he's another one of those guys. Like Wilson's another one of those guys. Like, where's a better spot? Like, you have DK Metcalf, you've got Lockett, you've got Penny. They just lost a ton of close games this year, and last year they won a ton of close games.
Yep. I mean, Russ, if you're Russ, Denver would be a nice spot for you, but I don't think he wants that.
No, it feels like he wants New York.
I wouldn't mind him going to the Jets.
I don't want him in the AFC. Go play in.
That's true.
Get him. Go to the Giants. Go win the NFC
Giants.
East.
Yeah, that's fine. Giants.
Or the football team, whatever they're going to be, Admirals or whatever they're going to be.
McLaurin.
All right,
Can't believe they're not going to be the Red
Vikings,
Hawks.
Bears. We're going to skip Washington Giants. Titans 28, Texans 25. One quick thought here, about 60 seconds.
What is Derrick Henry when he comes back?
This has to be one of the great coaching jobs.
For sure.
In terms of what they've done. They lose their offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, who goes to Atlanta to become their offensive coordinator or their head coach. Tannehill still plays well without Derrick Henry, without Julio Jones for the majority of the season. A.J. Brown's hurt for a lot of the season. Jonnu Smith is gone and now in New England, where he was a non-factor, which is insane.
Right.
But incredible job by the Titans.
Pride of Walsh Jesuit. Mike Vrabel.
Good
job out of him. Yeah, no, what's Derrick Henry like? Because no one's talking about them in the AFC. So is he close to what he once was? He hasn't played in a long time.
By the way, is Hopkins coming back for Arizona?
I think he's done, isn't he?
It sounds like J.J. Watt is coming back.
Watt is, but I think Hopkins is done.
Yeah.
I thought he was done, but I could very well be wrong. Still so much more to come. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
All right, got about a minute. You were up.
Today is always a tough day. College football over. NFL heading into the postseason. Lack of games. Add to that, no Succession, no Yellowstone for me, which are shows that I watched in real time through the fall. There's a vacuum here, kids. There's a vacuum of what to do.
There is. You're right. But then we're going to all of a sudden get a whirlwind of a weekend. And now you get a Monday night treat, a bonus for the first time ever.
And we get a day off Monday.
There you go, Gibby.
Oh, Gibby.
What a fantastic job. Yeah, that'll be fun. And I think the Manning cast will be fun in a playoff game.
Yes.
I hope they don't have as many guests. I hope that they do the game a little bit. I think that would be fun.
It would be fun.
For them to actually kind of do the game.
Break it down.
Yeah, a little bit. The next level is coming up next. We're back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.